That was it.
You okay?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. I apologize for all of that.
There we go. Okay.
I should be all set to start.
Okay.
Okay.
Hi, good morning. I'm Elaine Chapnick, president of the Larchmont Mamaroneck Local Summit. Welcome to our December meeting, co-hosted by LMC Media, who've made possible this Zoom session. After our formal meeting this morning, the Zoom will remain open so that you can stay and chat with each other. Again, welcome. Over the past 4 years, Americans have become more acutely aware of the flaws and vulnerabilities, not only in our democratic institutions, but also in our relations with one another. Right here at home, we feel it's time to look more closely at ourselves and have a forthright conversation on the issue of race in our community. That's the topic of this morning's presentation. I'll now turn the program over to today's chair, Reverend Tammy Burks. Tammy.
Thank you, Elaine, and I will echo Elaine's welcome and thank you to all 68 people who have joined us at 8 a.m. I am very impressed. Thank you so much. And I'd like to just start with a shout out to my co-committee members, Ann McAndrews and Theo Saul, who helped put this together. So what happened was in our planning meeting from the Larchmont Mamaroneck Summit Board, when we were meeting to plan the upcoming programs, Ann McAndrews actually said, you know, I've been hearing a lot about race. There was this Black Lives Matters mural that caused some controversy. There was, over the summer, there were high school students speaking out about issues of race. There was a Black Lives Matter march, and, you know, what's going on? And is this, you know, what are the questions? And ultimately, how do we talk about this? Recognizing that it can be an uncomfortable topic to talk about race, particularly when it becomes a local issue. I think it's easy sometimes to speak of it in big terms, in national types of events, but when it becomes local, it becomes hard and it becomes uncomfortable for to engage. And so the summit board, and I am grateful to them, said, yes, let's talk about this. Let's talk about how we can do better as a community to talk about these issues. And so I'm thrilled to invite that we have invited 2 local groups who are doing that work, who are starting to engage our local communities in the national conversations. And so what we're going to do is have both of them present for about 7 to 10 minutes. I will introduce them both, and then we will open it up to questions. And I believe the process will be that you will be able to raise your hand using, if you've not used it, down at the bottom of your screen, you should have a little hand raise option, and you can press on that and we will call on you and unmute you. You can also feel free, we're trying something new this month, and we have the chat open. So you can also put questions into the chat, but know that we won't be answering or addressing questions until both groups have participated. But we're hoping for a great conversation. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our 2 groups. The first is One Mamaroneck, and we have Dante Wells and Shannon Purdy. Dante is going to be, I believe, doing the presentation for us this morning. And just a really brief bio, Dante is the owner and founder of DNAFA and is currently a private contractor who conducts personal training. He has been teaching group fitness. He's been teaching a weekly boxing class in the Larchmont community. He's had some high profile clients, including from the NBA and the NFL. But most importantly, for our purposes this morning, Dante is the chair of One Mamaroneck's Community Organizing Task Force. And he sees his role in 1M's mission is to uplift and advocate for the POC community as a central life priority. His passion for his work with 1M is fed by his own painful past experiences of racist bullying within the Valhalla School District, his vigor in leading change as a Black business owner in Mamaroneck, and his natural desire to inspire personal growth as a coach. And joining Dante this morning is Shannon Purdy, who is on the board of directors of One Mamaroneck. And then we will also be hearing from CURE, the Coalition for Understanding Racism Throughout Education. And we have with us this morning Nicole Alafante, who is the founder of CURE, and she's a former actress, a current singer-songwriter, teacher, and working towards becoming an anti-racist activist. She grew up in New Rochelle and is a proud member of New Roar, which is New Rochelle Against Racism. And she founded that after participating in a life-changing Undoing Racism workshop through the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond. And she is joined this morning by Stacey DiCristofaro, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, who is one of the, yes, okay, who is one of the upcoming volunteers and presenters for CURE. So with further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Dante to present, and I really look forward to this, and thank you, all four of you, for agreeing to be here at this ungodly hour. Usually we would be serving you breakfast at the Mamaroneck Diner, so I owe you all a breakfast at some point in the future.
Tammy, thank you so much for that lovely introduction, and good morning and grand rising again to everyone. I hope everyone is doing well in these times. Yes, so I will begin. Just a brief story of how we came to be, of how one Mamaroneck came to be, and who our leadership is. One excuse me. Me and Shannon will be going back and forth with this presentation as well. One Mamaroneck was founded by David and Lorraine Martin in late 2018. It was born from the anguish that they both had experienced after their daughter was racially bullied, and the incident was horribly mishandled by the school district. Based on them coming out with their stories, dozens of other families emerged and were like, oh my gosh, like I thought we were the only ones who had to endure this. They had all of those incidents had gone unpunished, or it was poorly handled by the school administration.
That's right. And you know, it was kind of a grassroots beginning for One Mamaroneck, a loose collective of families that really were, you know, coming together. And for the first time, you know, the community was hearing that, you know, this wasn't just an isolated incident or two or three, that, you know, that it had been a systemic issue within the Mamaroneck School District. But this summer, right in the middle of a pandemic, One Mamaroneck actually formally incorporated as a 501c3 nonprofit. So we're excited about that. We continue to be proudly POC-led, and our mission has indeed grown a little bit to, you know, we are still very much centered on the school district and the issues there, but we are also keenly aware that in order for things to really change, for meaningful change to happen, the community needs to empathize. And so our mission has, you know, expanded a little bit to the larger community in terms of advocacy and activism. So with that, actually, our main goal, our main mission is to address and resolve systemic issues of diversity, bullying, and toxic leadership within the Mamaroneck School District and in the larger community. A couple of quick examples of ways that that has come to play in recent months. One Mamaroneck, you know, has become kind of like a go-to, right? So when Jarrett Winchester was presenting to the Board of Trustees for the BLM mural, he approached us and asked for, you know, group support. We recently got contacted by a lawyer who's representing a young woman in a lawsuit where she's been racially and sexually harassed by her super at her building. So we are genuinely, you know, focused on the school still, but our scope is expanding.
Absolutely. It's very important to have discussions like this to raise the concern, and to educate everyone. More importantly, that's so huge for me. The education part. The demographics of Larchmont and Mamaroneck, which are largely white, are not representative of larger U.S. of the larger U.S. population. Because of that, so many white folks who are not actively faced with the issues, with issues of racism, assume all as well. So it's some people just aren't aware, and that's what this is all about. For example, that's why we hosted the pop-up drive-in of showing of Ava DuVernay's 13th.
Right. I mean, some recent examples of, like systemic racism at work and alive and well in our community. And as Tammy mentioned, like, it's not always comfortable to talk about, but it's the only way that we can kind of face the enemy and defeat it. If any of you are following social media at all, you probably saw over the summer just hundreds and hundreds of testimonials from courageous students and alumni of MHS who posted under the hashtag Do Better or Shedding Light Mamaroneck or MAMK Larchmont BLM, their personal stories of just pain and trauma, from just casual racist epithets to actual like mental, emotional, physical abuse that they'd endured, and just either getting kind of no justice or very weak responses from the folks who were in charge. Another example was actually culminated in an Occupy movement that you may have noticed on the high school grounds this past summer. Alumni and alumnus Eileen Morales organized the Camp Out for Change. And essentially, the idea was we're going to build a tent city, and we're going to sit here and demand that, these meaningful changes get enacted in the school district. Eileen and others, again, approached One Mamaroneck and asked for our support. We, made sure that there were always adults on site just to make sure that the kids stayed. They're not kids, they're young adults, but to make sure that there were, no safety issues or anything like that. But what I can tell you, and Dante will attest, during the week that we were there with her, people would drive by screaming horrible things at these brave young people who were out there practicing their American right to protest. It wasn't so much that like they were being harassed by the police, so much as it was they were being actively harassed by residents.
More examples of this was the initial resistance from the Board of Trustees for Jarrett Winchester, a local here, and also 1M community member. His initial, the initial resistance for the Black Lives Matter mural proposal. It had to have a whole second vote just to be discussed, and not to mention the angry caravan of Trump supporters and Blue Lives Matter people heckling and spewing vile hatred and hostile words towards the young folks painting the mural. I was there. It was, it was toxic, and it was just like, oh my goodness, for something so peaceful, it was great vibes, lovely music, everyone was having a great time, and then here come this caravan of cars just saying nasty things. It was awful. And that itself is a challenge. Speaking of unique challenges working in this community, there are just so many white people who are unaware of their privilege and how they benefit from systemic racism.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, that gets back to what Dante was saying earlier about the importance of education. You know, look, I appreciate what Nicole said, you know, in terms of I'm striving to be a practicing ally. All of us who identify as white Americans play a role, even if it is a passive role of having benefited from this system, right? So without being able to see how each of us participates in the system, again, even if it's by doing nothing, even if all we do is remain silent and uninvolved, the violence against the POC community will persist, because it's not until, you know, all of us as white Americans, and I can say that, you know, because I am one, you know, make that intentional choice to strive to be anti-racist. It's not enough to say I'm not racist. There's no such thing. Racism is a system that we're all born into. So that's kind of where our education arm really strives to involve and engage the larger community. So you're probably wondering, how can you get involved? This sounds like really interesting work, and not a little bit uncomfortable, but you know, it's critical. Easy first step is just to visit our website, onemamaroneck.org. That's ONE, mamaroneck.org. That'll give you some more details on the backstory of how we got involved and engaged. You'll see there that there's an opportunity to donate. I will say unapologetically, as you know, leading a nonprofit again in these tough times, you know, for us to be able to put on community events like the pop-up drive-in, for us to be able to get the word out in the form of flyers or trifolds, for us to be able to, you know, have merch like cool One Mamaroneck hoodies and you know, just to do these educational programs does cost a bit of money. So one of the easiest ways you can support is simply make a donation. We're intentionally trying to avoid, you know, big corporate sponsors. We love every bit of help that we can get, but we're not seeking out, you know, sponsors that will force us to kind of negotiate our terms of what's important to us, you know, spiritually and emotionally. And of course, there's an opportunity there on the website to sign up for our newsletter, which is crafted by one of my fellow board members, Diana Lovett.
Absolutely. One more thing, and probably one of the greatest helps that you could do is join a One Mamaroneck task force. That's major, because that's like the stepping stones, and that's how we lay ground out for everything of how we pulled off events like the pop-up drive-in and so much more. The social media aspect is literally ran, you know, by, you know, a group of bright young kids. You know, they're fantastic. We welcome all folks interested in advocating for our people of color and our community. It's always important to be a practicing ally.
Great. Thank you so much. And we will look forward to hearing more from you and getting some questions to you. But I want to move on to and let Cure do their presentation. And then I see we are up to 91 people. So clearly people are wanting to talk and ask questions and have some discussions on this. And I do see from Theo that, and I think that is good, if one of you could give a definition of POC and BIPOC, because those of us on the call know, those of us on the panel know that term, but I'm imagining a lot of people out there don't. So thank you, Theo.
So I'll happily handle this one. The terms POC and BIPOC are, you know, sometimes used interchangeably, and that's not necessarily the context that we want to set for this conversation. BIPOC stands for Black and Indigenous People of Color. And typically that acronym is used in the context of, larger systemic issues like the criminalization of Black and Indigenous people, the systems of passive genocide, right? What we're looking at here in the Mamaroneck district and Larchmont communities, we use POC, people of color, because it's all inclusive. And it really does speak to, the very much more hyper local issues that we're experiencing. Violence against POC kids in the school district, potential, problems with police treatment and mishandling of the POC community, affordable housing, education and job opportunities and things like that. So when we say POC, we're really talking about anyone who's not white.
All right, thank you. Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, and now I will turn it over to Nicole and Stacy.
Hi, everybody. First, thank you so much for having us here at the summit. And thank you for that great presentation, Shannon and Dante. Obviously, you hit some points we were going to hit, so we'll try to get past those as we go through our little PowerPoint we have here. Again, the fear of sharing, here it goes. I'm going to get to my presentation here and okay, I'm going to get to my little present. Excuse me while I do this, everyone. And I'm going to share my screen. Okay, I'm sharing screen now, so hopefully that works. Okay, so please let me know, give me the thumbs up if you can see. Hold on, I'm going to make this bigger. Can you see that? You can see the presentation. Okay, great. Woo, little palpitations in the chest here. Okay, so I have to move you guys so I can scroll this. All right. So we're CURE, the Coalition for Understanding Racism Through Education. We are a community advocacy group that is run by volunteers. And we were founded because we believe that dismantling racism has to be an ongoing process and a conversation that is relentless and isn't a one-off and doesn't end because, as Dante and Shannon said, this is a systemic problem in our country. We are born here, so we're immediately sort of born into the DNA of institutional racism. We do our work by learning through history and by holding events and programs throughout the community every year. So this is actually the 32nd Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. commemoration. We partnered with the Human Rights Committee 2 years ago, and we invited John Bwin and Dr. Chenjerai Komanika, who are from a podcast called Seen on Radio, and there's 14 episodes called Seeing White, and I highly recommend it. We can give you resources afterwards if anybody wants to know about some of the things that we mentioned here. Understanding how racism presents itself. So I think the tricky thing is, there's that interpersonal piece where as white people, if we have family members who are Black or friends or coworkers and we get along, we think I'm not racist, it's all good. But what we're really trying to look at is institutional racism, which are laws, policies, practices that are codified in all of our institutions like healthcare, criminal justice, that oppress Black, Indigenous people of color. And, interpersonal is a symptom of a much bigger problem that our country faces. I get a lot of my learning from the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, which started undoing racism training workshops in the 70s. And their little sort of equation is prejudice plus power equals racism. So once you add prejudice to the people who run everything, that you get pretty much racism. That's kind of a basic equation. So I think, Stacy, you are next.
Good morning, everyone. It's a really honor to be here with you all and with Mamaroneck as well. This quote is from Isabel Wilkerson, the author of Caste, which is another resource that we recommend highly, and an incredible book discussing the caste system in our country. America is an old house. Excuse me, I can't quite see. America is an old house. We are the heirs to whatever is right or wrong with it. We did not erect the uneven pillars or joists, but they are ours to deal with now. You know, and I think, as Nicole was saying, you know, a lot of us would say we didn't own slaves, we didn't cause racism. But the reality is that our American institutions are built on racism and racial bias in policy and practice. So why do we need to attend to racism locally? Because it is here, it is our house. And though we didn't build it, and it's easy for us white folks to get confused though we didn't build it, we need to see it, and we need to see that it needs to change, because we benefit from it. We benefit from, as white people, we benefit from the building of this house, because it has trained us in a mindset that if one person is lifted up, then another person has to go down. Engaging the topic of race and racism is uncomfortable, and that's kind of one of our main sayings, but we want to talk about it. The other thing that we need to look at locally is charity versus equity. You know, we as white people are often very good at offering charity, and charity is a great thing. It's helping other people, but equity is really what is going to dismantle the systems of racism. Equity offers anyone, regardless of color, leadership and ownership, not just help. And that in our community is something that we can all grow in understanding and work towards change. Go ahead.
Thanks, Stacy. So how do we talk about race and racism in our towns? CURE's belief is that education is a first step for sure. We are the Coalition for Understanding Racism Through Education. In about almost 2.5, maybe close on 3 years, we've had events that served about 1,000 neighbors. We've held around 20 small and large events in Larchmont and Mamaroneck. We have some incredible partners like the Larchmont Avenue Church and the Human Rights Committee. And so we're really fortunate in that respect, the Community Resource Center as well. So understanding whiteness is another way that we have this discussion, and embracing accountability. So CURE, you know, is looking at this as part of a huge puzzle. We're not experts. We bring in people who have been dissecting this, writing about this, living this, you know, for a very long time. And we believe that education is not the end all be all, but there are many ways to be allies, to be activists. But education is surely one, because if you don't know what you're fighting for, how do you fight, right? So CURE is speaking to a predominantly white audience. That's where we are. And, you know, what I find exciting about this conversation is that it's embedded in history and facts and undeniable things that once we learn, we can't really turn a blind eye to. And that's where I find it truly to be a very hopeful, we do as a collective, a conversation and something that we can really move through with our community. I think I might be messing up our slides, Stacy, so don't get mad at me. Do you want to read this one? Oh, can you hear me? Hello?
Sorry about that. I was trying to mute and unmute to not.
Okay, I feel like I might have jumped, but go ahead. You read this one.
Another great quote by an Indigenous Australian activist, Lila Watson: "If you've come here to help me, you're wasting your time. But if you've come here because your liberation is bound up with mine, then let us work together."
Yeah, I love that one. I feel like that grounds me in my work all of the time whenever I get confused or frustrated and overwhelmed. This is a collective liberation that we're going for here. If we are living in a construct that systemically oppresses some people or gives some people benefits and not others, then we're all part of that and we are not really free. I don't want to be one of the people who oppresses or who gets perks because I'm white. So I'm really not living to my best self if I'm in this construct. And so slide number 9 here. This is, difficult and necessary conversations. Like Dante and Shannon said, it's uncomfortable. And our mantra is talking about race, and racism is uncomfortable. So let's talk. And we are going to continue to keep those conversations alive. Some of the highlights of the things we've brought here, the 33rd commemoration with the Human Rights Committee was with a gentleman named Marlon Peterson, who was our keynote speaker. He's a prison abolitionist. He told his story of being, I think, 17 years old and caught in a armed robbery, and he was sent to jail as a teenager, and his life obviously changed dramatically. He has been since released from prison, but does incredible work in reform, in reimagining criminal justice, and in prison abolition. Abolition is a pretty heavy idea. What do you mean, no prisons, right? But someone said once that the way you judge a country's moral character is by their prisons, and the way our prison system works is certainly racist and certainly inhumane compared actually to other countries. We had training for employers here, which was focused on domestic workers. Again, having women of color, men of color, working in our homes, raising our children with us, taking care of our homes, that gives our ecosystem this boost of, men and women here who own homes and have to go to work. And we have these incredible people who help us keep that afloat, and yet their jobs are not protected. And so there's a history of that, that sort of leads up to where we are today with that. We have people who take care of us, but they don't have vacation pay, they don't have, health insurance, they don't have benefits. So they're actually New York State, there's a domestic workers' rights bill that's been on the table, and there are ways for employers to be equitable. We also had a workshop for parents on how to talk to kids about race and racism, which was like an appetizer, because that's such a, heavy thing to learn and to incorporate into your daily lives. So we hope to bring that back. And then we had a kind of a meditative experience with Dr. Acosta and Angel Acosta from Colombia, who went through this beautiful timeline of 400 years of inequality and racism in our country. And we literally breathed through it together and metabolized it together. And it was very moving and very, very powerful. You want to take that one, Stacy?
Yeah, I'll just say, and the ding, that, though we are all about education, we're really all about transformation, because it's not just about talking and learning, but connecting, acknowledging, and moving together towards a more whole and equitable community and world. We acknowledge that we are white people, and we are part of this system, and who, again, didn't create the problem, but benefit from just the from systemic racism. But rather than, sometimes having these conversations can be so difficult because people, ourselves included, feel condemned. I didn't cause this, and I apologize about the ding. But we really want to call people in. We feel like central to this work is actually love, acknowledging who we are, where we've all come from, and really meeting people where they are, meeting ourselves where they are. And I just have to say that I've found my ongoing experience in life with CURE and in the way that it's changed me as a person, that I'm so grateful that I'm met where I am. We are not here to condemn people. We don't want to leave anyone behind. We want to meet people where they are in their learning and their life experience. And at the same time, respond with urgency, because this is urgent. We say very often, we are so late to the party. We are so late to this not party, but to this work. And it is urgent that we see race and racism and what it has done to our BIPOC and POC community members, what it is doing in our country, and yet our experience and our ability to address it is an ongoing process. So we want to meet people with love, and we want to meet people with urgency.
So there's a continuum here. I remember seeing this, April Francis presented it at the Homics when she first came on, and we sort of narrowed it down a little bit. But ultimately, you know, we can be culturally proficient and racially literate in our lives in different spaces, sometimes, you know, more adeptly than others. So, you know, at work, I might be led by people of color, and I might be really jiving there and understanding how to sort of navigate a space like that. But then I might go back to my community and shut down and not talk about it because I'm afraid, or because, you know, I don't want to get into trouble or whatever. So we have to look at ourselves first and say, where am I here? You know, am I seeking to eliminate cultures of others? Am I seeking to make the cultures of others appear inferior? Am I not noticing or acknowledging the cultures of others? Am I at this place when I have an increasing awareness and I know I need to learn? Am I now aligning myself and my personal values and behaviors in a manner that's inclusive? And then am I actually seeing myself as an instrument of someone who can create a true democracy? You know, democracy is a word we throw around. We say liberty and justice for all. The word all we throw around. You know, what does that mean? It didn't historically mean Black people in this country for a very long time. And we still see that in our practices. This little continuum can be applied to a school, a business, your home, your own spiritual self. So it's a way of sort of looking internally and externally at how systems are working and using it as kind of a barometer. And Stacey, you want to take that one?
Yeah. So this is about our programming. You know, we create an annual program schedule. You know, we try to bring in speakers like Marlon Peterson. This picture, which is such a fantastic picture, is from, again, 33rd Martin Luther King commemoration, where our own Elizabeth Sanger from the Larchmont Mamaroneck Human Rights Committee was honored for starting a youth shelter, the youth shelter program of Westchester for at-risk youth. And here she's with Marlon Peterson, who is our speaker, national speaker, writer, advocate, and podcaster. You know, and it's just such a beautiful image because, you know, Elizabeth, you know, actively, you know, working to dismantle, and Marlon, you know, living through and doing the same. And so we try to bring in several times a year these sort of really impactful speakers that speak to issues that are real and ongoing, and also do all different kinds of small group types of learning events. We wanted to provide different entry points and experiences addressing things that are going on in the community, and some of the things that Nicole mentioned, things that are issues and aspects of racism that are very real in our day-to-day. We try to bring national voices mixed with local perspectives. And we always provide resources and action items at the end of all of our programs for all attendees.
Thanks, Stacey. I don't know if you haven't had a chance to see the mural. It's really, really beautiful. And I'm glad One Mamaroneck was there to support that effort. So what are our local challenges of having this conversation? It's easy to focus on the negative. It's, we have to sometimes, absolutely. But I think a lot of the times there are shared goals that we can focus on and actions, and we can really facilitate change if we start to do that together as a community. We do speak to a predominantly white community. However, we see that as this is where we find ourselves, and it's an incredible opportunity. My mentors who are people of color basically told me, please, as a white person, speak to white people, because this is labor for us. And it's, not something that we want to continue to teach generation after generation when we're living it. So I took that and ran with it. And the women who work with me in CURE run with that as well. And then addressing racism requires multiple approaches. So we do need to embrace partnership, even when we're doing this work differently, may not agree with each other in the way we do the work. We still have to come together and find those moments where we can build an army. And I think, that will happen over time as we all become more conscious and we get focused together. Just want to pause on this gentleman who I think people sometimes misinterpret or want to only focus on the "I had a dream" speech. So Stacy, if you want to read the next slide.
Later in his life, Dr. Martin Luther King, though known for peaceful protest, also in his letter from a Birmingham jail said this: "I must make two honest confessions to you, my Christian and Jewish brothers. First, I must confess that over the past few years, I've been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I've almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice." Just really profound.
Yeah, when I read that, I was like, where in my education did I miss this letter? What teacher didn't put that letter in front of me? Because I had a dream loop in my head. But all of these great leaders who I want to point out were brutally murdered publicly in front of the world. Medgar Evers, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, JFK, the people who were on this march. I think that's really a potent thing to digest. So listening to them, their readings, their writings, the journeys they took really inform, I think, a lot of what America has been through. And I think we only get little snippets of it. So we're Learn with CURE. If you would like to volunteer with us or know more about us, the email is there, the website is there. We too, raise money for what we do locally. We're a nonprofit, we're not a 501c3. Our fiscal sponsor is the Larchmont Mamaroneck Lions Club. I think we're working toward a 501c3 in the near future. And we really want to create braver and safe spaces and uncomfortable spaces for people to make mistakes, to trip, again, with urgency, but together, and to see how we can really move the needle here to create equity. So thank you so much for listening to us. Thank you for having us, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much. And at this point, I think we will open it up for questions from the community. And I will, as Theo Saul is going to be calling on people and moderating that for us. But use your chat function at the bottom of your screen, or not the chat, the raise hand function. And LMC Media will unmute you so you can ask your question, or you can put it in the chat as well. But thank you both, or all.
Hi, everyone. I have an early question in the chat from Carolyn Gallagher. Carolyn, are you there? And would you like to, do you still want to ask your question?
Hand is currently raised. So I will
Okay,
Oh, here she is.
Carolyn, you are muted, but if you'd like to ask your question, you can unmute and go ahead.
I think, like others, we'd like to have some examples of how racism has raised its head in our community and how it has been addressed.
Did everyone hear that?
Absolutely.
Who would
Hey,
like to give
Caroline.
some examples, specific examples without naming names, of any victims, of specific examples of racism, not just necessarily in the schools?
Well, I'll just really lay back to what me and Shannon spoke on. That is just being, per se on the Board of Trustees call on the second revote where we noticed we had to all in support for the mural. It took us rallying in large numbers and speaking so highly of the positive outcome that this could have and the backlash it was met with. And I'll be very quite bluntly honest with you. If anyone was listening to that meeting, it's actually available on YouTube. I do believe there were a lot of people who were masking ways to show that they were racists. The remarks that were said and ridiculous reasons just to not be in for something that could be so uplifting. It was ridiculous. Listen, like we also said, the caravan of heckling and spewing hatred and vile comments, and not to mention there were tire screeches actually on the mural a week after it was painted, and we had to go out there and do it again. And there are very blatant things that that I've seen, and also as being a Black man in this community, ever since I've been coming here, because I do dine at local garden catering and a few other spots I can't. Texas chili as well. They're open quite late at night, and you go in there around 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock a.m. The way that some of those police just stare at me, I'm up and down. You could feel it. These are things that I've seen firsthand as a Black man in this community.
Thank you for that. I think we've all seen different examples. I personally have a friend, a person of color who lives on Fenimore, and he drove to the Nautilus Diner to get some soup and back home, and he was stopped 3 times between Fenimore and near the Post Road. I'm not Fenimore far into Scarsdale. Very short drive. He was stopped by 3 different police officers 3 different times for not doing anything.
And I was going to just jump in. I have young adult boys who have never, ever, ever been stopped by the police for walking in the manor at night or biking at night. And all of their friends of color have had at least one, if not multiple experiences of being stopped and questioned where they were going, why they were here, why they were in the community. So it, definitely happens.
And as for the mural, I discovered in the Daily Voice, the article that described the painting of the mural and that very joyful day. One of the comments said, "Oh, it'll be defaced soon," or "I will deface it soon." And sure enough, it was defaced. And that's a hate crime, as far as I can tell. So, and there are so many other examples. And if people have not seen or heard of examples of prejudice and flat out racism against people of color in our community, look around, contact CURE, contact One Mamaroneck. There are myriad examples. Okay, Liam Haggerty, I know that you have a question. I'm not sure that this is the right address for your question, but you could unmute and go ahead. Liam, are you there? Okay, I'm going to move on to Larry, one of our Summit board members. Larry Thal, are you still there? There's Larry.
Yes, I'm here.
Hi, good morning.
This is a wonderful program. I'm very engaged. Thank you all. Extremely great presenters. I wanted to ask about, I was aware of something called the 21-day challenge. And it was based on Eddie Moore's 21-day challenge from 2014. This is a long process. It's not just a spring, right? This will take time and commitment. But are you familiar with this type of challenge where for a few weeks, a month, as long as it takes, you engage in readings, watching videos, changing your behaviors? Do you recommend any particular one of these type of challenges, or just to get involved and start today? I'd like to hear the panelists' reaction.
I can jump in. I think my mother-in-law's temple in New York City was doing one of those challenges. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. The only wrong answer would be not to do anything. I think education is huge. Getting involved in local organizations. When Mamaroneck's here, Cure's here, the Community Resource Center always needs support. I think I really do find education to be, reading, watching, and then telling a friend or a family member, that you've seen something that moved you or that changed your lens and you want to share it. You'll be surprised how hard it is to get people to enter the racism material. But yeah, so the only wrong answer is not to do anything. That's really how I feel. And for everyone has a personal way of entering this, so that, that shouldn't be judged either. There are people that are doing incredible things very privately, and they might not want to talk about it. That's fine for them at that point. And then there are people that are doing things publicly in a grand way, and that's fine too.
Thank you. And charity can become equity, right, over time as well, as you get deeper into.
Yeah, and I want to make a point about equity since you brought it up, and Stacy put it really well in the presentation. But equity, we were talking about this last night, Stacy and I, like, that thing of like, you can give people the fish or you can teach them how to fish, right? But equity transcends that. I, as a white person, am not teaching anyone anything. I am wanting to live in a world that values everyone's humanity at the same level. And so people of color not only should have a seat at the table, they might own the table. They might have made the table. They might build the table. That it's not about white people finally saying, okay, well, you can have a slice of my pie. That's not what equity is. Equity is truly level playing field. If you rise, you rise. If you fall, you fall. That's human nature, but you start here. And we haven't done that in this country to this moment.
Thank you for this very much.
Okay, I'm not playing favorites, but Elizabeth Sanger. Are you there, Elizabeth? There she is. This Elizabeth, if you don't know her, she was in that beautiful photograph receiving the Human Rights Award. And she's also part of our board. Elizabeth, good morning.
Good morning. Can you hear me now?
Absolutely.
Oh, good. Okay. I would just like for us to talk a little bit more about the obvious but the hard thing, the extent to which racism is aligned with financial success or privilege. And it's not talked about very much. I mean, the term nice neighborhood. Nice neighborhood means, does it mean a rich neighborhood? Does it mean a white neighborhood? What are we talking about? And it's hard to decode these kinds of, expressions that we all use. But I would like to hear some response from others about that.
Elizabeth, I'm so happy you brought that up because I can't imagine how many times, growing up as, a young curious kid, you know, just driving through these places and seeing, I'm just like, Mom, like, why is there such a distinct difference when it's only probably about a mile in distance, but the whole dynamic of the neighborhood changes. Redlining is a huge issue. It's something that's, you know, very still present today, and you know, gentrification falls into that category as well. You know, it's quite saddening, you know, and that's one of the more larger issues of systemic racism that almost seems impossible to undo, but it's just one of the more stronger counterways to, one of the more ways to counter that is to inform yourself on what the Black dollar is. You know, it's black people and people of color here in America hold a $1.2 trillion spending power. You know, so where our cash and where you put your funds matter. You know, funneling those back into Black-owned businesses. You know, buying the whole term, buying back the block. You know, it's you go into Black neighborhoods and you see stores and places owned by people that don't look like us. In particular, Tulsa, Oklahoma was a perfect example of how flourishing we can be when we all put our minds together. So there is proof of that we can undo that. It's just it just takes not only the Black and people of color community, but others as well, and that's a big part of how you can help. You know, putting, you know, your money towards the Black community, small stuff like that can overcome that entire change that entire dynamic.
Absolutely. And just to like grab onto one point that Dante made, and a little bit more and kind of specific to our local community, when Jarrett Winchester came to the board in the village of Mamaroneck and asked for permission to volunteer his time, that his family's resources, the paint, everything, all they wanted was permission to be able to paint this beautiful mural in their own neighborhood. And you know, it can't be overstated when you look at the population of the elementary schools in Mamaroneck and Larchmont. And here's part of why there are such deep problems in the school district. All of the POC community, not almost all of the POC community lives in the village of Mamaroneck, and their children attend Mamaroneck Avenue School. Almost all. When you look at the demographics of the 5 elementary schools that culminate at the high school, there is serious example of redlining right here in our community. And so the irony that here this Black man whose family has been generations deep in this village comes to ask his village for permission to paint a mural in his neighborhood, and the immediate conversation is, well, we're just going to relocate that. We're just going to put that somewhere where it makes us more comfortable. You know, I think again is just the classism, Elizabeth, that you're talking about, an example.
I'm going to ask a question on behalf of an audience member named Liam Haggerty. And Liam is troubled by just let me preface it. You probably know that the governor has made a mandate for every town and village to form a committee to reinvent and reform the police. And the Village of Larchmont, and many of these committees have chosen to release a survey to the community with relevant questions, part of the mandate, to get audience feedback, to get residential feedback on experience with interface with the police and attitudes towards the role of the police. Apparently, according to Mr. Haggerty in Larchmont, the survey is limited to residents of the Village of Larchmont only. That's not true for every community survey. And he was wondering if one of you would address that. Anybody on the panel have any attitude?
Right.
Go ahead, Dante.
Were we addressing the overall issue? I'm sorry, that question I'm not following. Or are we addressing the limit of that survey?
I suggested that Mr. Haggerty go to that committee and ask them why their survey was limited. And I also told him, I serve on the Village of Mamaroneck committee, that there are lots of ways to contact the committee and share his own experiences, not necessarily through the survey. And I'm sure committee members would be very interested. If you have a more general opinion about whether that survey should be limited, by all means. If not, we can discuss these committees and how they can help our communities during the chat afterwards.
Right.
Because I think it is very important.
Absolutely.
You want to say something?
Of course. No, in my personal belief, I do not think it should be limited, because the same way how I'm from Mamaroneck and I reside in Mamaroneck. I spend quite a lot of time in White Plains. I spend a lot of time in the 5 boroughs. You know, I'm not always of my community police. You know, so there are people who work in Mamaroneck that commute here and travel here and spend a sufficient amount of time here on days on end. You know, I can name countless, types of jobs that require that. You know, you come off the bus at 9 a.m. into Mamaroneck. How many caretakers do you see hopping off of the bus and walking to families? People who do landscaping, spend time in your backyard, and tending to your property, and you wouldn't even know because you're probably at work or X, Y, and Z, but then someone feels a way to call the police, when you hear someone in your backyard. And I'm lived experience. I can recall there was one day where there were people in my backyard chopping down a tree. I didn't know that was happening, but so obviously their contractor applied that to them. So the people live lives out here, but aren't necessarily from here. So no, I do not believe that these surveys should be limited.
Thank you. Long time Village.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in only because I see that it's 9:05, and I want to ask Elaine, we're supposed to be ending at 9 and then opening up? I just want to make sure.
We usually end at 9 for the sake of our attendees who are often required to do other things after 9 o'clock. We have the opportunity, though, to go on for another 15 minutes because LMC Media has agreed to allow the Zoom to continue so we can continue our chat.
Excellent. I just want to say, in case people need to leave, that we will be putting together a list of resources that we will be putting out on the, I believe on the Summit website. We usually put out things after these meetings because people are putting in the chats a bunch of great comments and things about various resources and books and things. So that will be.
I want to just jump in and say, because our regular time has come to the end, I want to thank now, take the opportunity now to thank all of this wonderful panel for your presentations, and thank Reverend Burks and Theo for moderating as well. It's been a very enlightening morning, and I really want to thank you for your time, and thank everyone else for attending. And now we can continue for a few more minutes, as you please. Thank you again.
We have a question from longtime Village of Mamaroneck trustee Marlene Colbert. Marlene, are you here?
You want to ask the question, her question? She probably left because it's after 9.
Did you write her question?
Oh.
I will look for it in a minute. Oh, there she is.
Okay.
Can
Great.
can Marlene unmute, please? Marlene, you're muted.
Okay, all right, is that
There you
better?
go.
You know,
Hi.
I'm sorry, but I lowered my hand because really you answered my question. You know, the mayor had sent out asking for volunteers for people who wanted to be on that committee, right? To examine the police. But I just want to say that I think maybe it was limited to Larchmont residents because since we live in this municipal area, probably they don't want to step on the toes. In other words, the village of Larchmont doesn't want to step on the toes of town of Mamaroneck, a village, so they probably have all sent it to their own constituents. So that's my sense of why maybe it was limited to Larchmont residents. Thanks.
Thanks for coming. Lynn Reichgott. Lynn wanted to know how much contact the two organizations have with each other, and I would extend to other organizations. I know the CRC is a relevant organization, and are there others? And if people wanted to contact and get involved, can you discuss that a minute?
Well, we'll jump in first, just because we recently had actually a board meeting where we invited the Community Resource Center to come and just spend an hour with us brainstorming about ways that we can better echo and amplify each other's work. You know, they are a long-standing physical space here in Washingtonville, in the village of Mamaroneck. And, you know, for folks who know Gerandi Martinez, she is a powerhouse. She and Janet Fry are involved in so much. But, you know, all too often the nuanced, you know, misunderstanding of like the Community Resource Center is there for the immigrant community. They're there for the Latinx community. That's all they care about. And that's just not true. Just as, you know, folks see One Mamaroneck as, oh, well, they're only interested in, you know, pot kids in the school. And that's also not true. So we're really, you know, actively brainstorming with them about ways that we can better, you know, support and amplify each other's work. You know, and we had a conversation with Cure last summer. I'll let Nicole handle that one. But yeah, we do try to do what we can to amplify each other.
I'll jump in, or Nicole. I was just going to say, you know, I think Nicole said in our presentation that, you know, we really do just strive to create partnerships, you know, if things are aligned in mission. And one thing that we've really been so grateful for is the CRC. And we've had the opportunity to know Gerandi and the team over there. And at the start of the pandemic, Cure was able to gather resources and reach out to all of our kind of constituents and begin to develop and distribute healthcare need packets to community members who had lost jobs or might be sick. And that work went on for many months. And we've also been able to be active in the Coalition for Community and the food distribution in Mamaroneck. And, you know, we try to stay focused on mission in terms of education as a group of CURE. And yet our leaders and members are kind of working and active all over the community, as I know, so as I'm sure is One Mamaroneck. So I think Nicole said that we want to and need to all be loving on each other and working together and supporting one another, though our work might look a little different. So that's sort of, I don't know if Nicole, you want to add anything?
No, I think that's spot on. I think that it behooves all of us, Community Resource Center, One Mamaroneck, Cure, the houses of worship, the library, everyone now really wants to engage in this conversation. I think organically over time, the relationships build, and they build out of specific actions and efforts that, we can align with. So it's really the more the merrier. It's very much, you can't have enough of this. And, I was watching a superintendent in Nyack, and they were discussing the work that they're doing there with equity. And he said, equity is the most pressing issue facing American public education. And so, I think people are really starting to understand that this infiltrates every topic. You can talk about the environment, you can talk about healthcare, you can go down the list. Racism and systems that perpetuate racism and our role in it is just, it's involved, it's embedded in everything. So the more people here doing it, talking about it, working on it, aligning, the better.
Now, Nancy Pearson had asked a question about could someone discuss the various task forces and, other organizations or groups that have risen up now. Can you expand this conversation a little bit, if you know about local task forces and student-based task forces, et cetera, to answer Nancy's question? Thanks.
We'll take that one. So right now, One Mamaroneck has actually 4 separate task forces that are working specifically on, projects that are under our purview, as well as like larger community-based efforts. So one of our task forces is focused on communications and the social media machine that powers so much of our message. A second one is focused on community organizing, and Dante chairs that one. So, we're thinking in terms of events like the pop-up drive-in, the 2021 Juneteenth parade and festival that we hope to put on, COVID permitting. The Black Power workshops that we're going to be coordinating via Zoom. Very kind of like, we call the community organizing task force like the infantry of One Mamaroneck, really getting out there and doing the live events. We have one task force dedicated to recruiting. And so a lot of that is just kind of like what we're doing today, educating the larger community about the importance of our work and, getting more of a member base. And then finally, our 4th task force is focused specifically on issues regarding the Mamaroneck School District, curriculum reform, getting more representation amongst the faculty and counselors and on the Board of Education itself.
That's another question that somebody in the chat has been asking about diversity in among teachers. Does somebody want to address that more directly? Nicole, do you want to say something about that?
Sure. Yeah. And I also want to just piggyback off of what Shannon was saying. I think, I don't know if Nancy's question also is more broadly maybe about other task force. And if Dante and Shannon, of ones that I don't know of, chime in. But I know that, there's the Cuomo 2033. And so we're reimagining police. There's a racial and equity task force that I watched a video of last night. And I have to say, that seems like a really smart, dedicated group. They're communicating really beautifully. They're talking directly to the chief. There were some moments that were very hopeful. So I hope, across the country, the state, that it's not just an optics thing, that it really has teeth. I know, the school is putting together the diversity equity team, and they just called out for community members to get involved. So I'm hoping that they get the community members who are really passionate about this. So I just wanted to throw that in. But in terms of the diversity in teaching staff, yeah, again, I love to connect history to everything. When our country made that Supreme Court decision to integrate our schools, we saw tens of thousands of Black educators with PhDs and masters fired. That's how that went down. It was not, yay, now Black and brown kids can go to school with white kids and everyone's going to live happily ever after. And that's sort of how we tell the story. And we have the Norman Rockwell painting of the little girl walking and the people throwing, tomatoes. That's not the story. It's a much deeper story. There were people that risked their lives to get masters. There were thriving Black schools, especially in the South, that were under-resourced, but they were brilliant. And So you have this whole pipeline through generations of teachers that have not looked at their mothers or grandmothers and said, okay, I'm going to go into this profession as well, because it was really ripped off I was going to say a Band-Aid, but that's not what I mean. Anyway, my point is, so historically, you have this kind of crushing of the pipeline of educators, Black and brown educators in our country. And now you see in, predominantly Black schools and white districts or mixed districts, we have a lot of white educators. And there are studies that show that if a Black student has even 1 or 2 Black educators in their journey, their rates of graduation, their rates of just performance rise. And we see in white students as well, just a total rising tide in when there's a diverse set of leaders in our lives. So I think, history again, connecting to today, connecting to where we need to go, it's a no-brainer that at least the demographic of the teaching staff should somehow match the community.
Absolutely. Nicole, just to piggyback off of what you said, I knew for me, having teachers that looked like me was major. It made me want to be in school, show up to school, I couldn't wait for, 7th period, because I knew I had that teacher. I could recall my kindergarten teacher, Miss Mango, who I still from time to time see in Westchester here and there, and every time it's like, oh my God, how are you? Like it's like I remember last time I saw her was 2 years ago, and prior to that it was 4 years ago. So I still see her from time to time, and those teachers really leave an impact and really help mold a student. It is very important that there's a good representation of the students within the faculty, not just the teachers, but guidance counselors as well. That's super huge. We're talking about someone who's going to help you choose your college route, and I didn't have that luxury, unfortunately, but that I see now what could have been and what opportunities I did miss. That's just super important.
I've had a follow-up question from a person who actually asked the first question related to this Maud Freiburg. She's essentially saying, does anybody know what the statistics are for teachers of color in the school system in Mamaroneck or Rhinebeck? Do we have any numbers on that? Can we get back to people with numbers? And whether there is a specific plan for increasing diversity. Is that the task force that's being developed?
So we can certainly help with the numbers because One Mamaroneck actually put together a very detailed infographic that has the demographics of the faculty, the school board, the folks who basically are representing the school right now. But I don't have that at our fingertips, but we could certainly supply that back.
Okay, maybe we can find a way to make that available.
And I just wanted to really quickly, because I share that on the One Mamaroneck Instagram page, as well as their Facebook page, and I'm just going to share my screen, you can see some of these great infographics that they were talking about. So can everybody see this? I'm sharing. So for example, this is one that they put together called Let's Talk About White Fragility. And it's, what is it? The backstory, little, informative kinds of things. And this is what they were talking about, that there's a group of mostly high school students, I believe, who are behind this great thing. And they have, really wonderful ones, action items. How do you do this? And how do you, here's even questions, some of these questions to start. So for people who are looking for a hyper local way to, just dive into this a little bit, on the, that is awesome. And I have been personally really super impressed with with those and getting them on, from every once in a while. One will pop up on my Facebook or my Instagram, and it's just a bite-size, education piece. And I believe there is one of those infographics on the diversity in the school system. There's one about history of slavery they just put out in Mamaroneck, and all of those kinds of things. So just a shout out for that as well.
Thank you. So I would have been asked to make a plug by a fellow committee member for the Village of Mamaroneck Police Reform Committee. We have a public comment meeting on Thursday at 7 p.m. The Village of Mamaroneck website has an entire page devoted to the actions of this committee, including the Zoom link. So please, if you are in Larchmont, if you have in the town of Mamaroneck, if you have had interactions with the Village of Mamaroneck Police and would like to share your own personal experiences or express thoughts and feelings about it, we have a public meeting open for comment. Welcome to come and comment and help us form the police department that you want. Please go to the website and go to the Zoom link, 7 p.m. and log on. Thank you for that. We need your help. Amy, are you still there? See if Amy still has a question. Sorry about that.
And I want to be mindful of our panelists' time as well, because I know they may have something else to do. So I know we could probably go on with this conversation for ages and ages. And I think this answers the question, can we talk about race, with a big yes, and people really want to talk about it and want to be engaged in these conversations. So I hope we can find ways to do that. And I see Nicole just put on Thursday from 8 to 9, we're having a small Zoom conversation where we're listening to community members. We're trying to keep it to 12 people. Email if you're interested, great. And I would say stay tuned in all of these ways. And I'm hopeful that the summit can help get some of this information out on an ongoing basis.
Once again, I'd like to thank everyone. I think it's time to really wrap up. I'd like to invite everybody to join us again in January, on January 5th, where we will hear from our state elected officials to see what's coming out that will affect us from our state legislatures and state legislators. So thank you all for attending. Thank you once again, our panel and our leaders, for a very enlightening